Good evening, everyone. My name is Precious Green. I am the Director of Programming here at Manny's, and we are so grateful that you all are joining us tonight, either in person or via Zoom. We are a space for community, and I like to think great conversation. We are the place where people can come and get engaged in civic and political life, as well as expand their knowledge. And I think that's one of my favorite things about what we do here at Manny's. And tonight is a perfect example of that. Our guests are going to be presenting and talking about a brand new book. I want to make sure I'm going to get it right. Howard Mortman of C-SPAN TV in DC is going to be discussing his book with us tonight, When Rabbis Bless Congres, the Great American Story of Jewish Prayers on Capitol Hill. So I'm going to turn it over to you all to dive right in. We will have the conversation and then save some time for Q&A at the end. And if this, I'm realizing I've kind of gone out of order. Is anyone here for the first time? Oh, wow, okay. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. When we wrap up, I'll tell a little bit more about what we do here, but enjoy the conversation.
Thank you, Precious. So my name is Andy Garlicove, and I was the first one in the room, so Howard asked me up front. No, thank you for the intro. Howard and I have known each other for 25-ish years, but this is the first time I've seen you in over a decade. So thanks for coming out to the Bay Area. Super excited to do this. Howard and I actually had a conversation about this book, sponsored by my synagogue, Peninsula Temple Bethel down in San Mateo, and I'm delighted to do this again with you.
Thank you. This is Andy's right. We do go back a long time. I'm so fortunate to have him on stage with me here today to moderate the discussion. And thanks to everybody in the room who's come out for this. Even though I know we're on Zoom, is there any way I can just ask everybody's name here? Just they start.
Hi, I'm Claire.
Hi there. Nice. Okay, very good. Thank you.
I'm Ash.
Ash, nice to meet you. Okay.
I'm Sherman.
Sure. Hi there, Sherman. Thank you.
I'm Michael.
Michael.
My name is Guy.
Hi there. Nice to meet you.
Tom.
Very good, Tom. Thank you all for joining this. Thank you for everybody on Zoom as well. Big thank you to Manny's for doing this. This is, for me personally, this is a huge thing. And Andy's gonna lead the conversation, but as a first-time author, first time doing this is my first in-person event. And just a huge thanks to Manny and the staff here for seeing the vision, for seeing this and putting this together. So we hope to have a good evening. Conversation questions. There is a presentation that, depending on time, we'll try to get to the short examples of the topic and kind of lead it from there. But I'm already violating my no micromanaging the conversation rule. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome again, Andy Garlicove.
You're glad I'm here, so don't do all your own jokes. So Howard, first time author. The first question I had when I saw that you had written this book was why? Like how did it come about, this topic? And I don't know if anyone here, maybe on Zoom, but you folks here, did anyone ever think about writing a book? Yeah, me too. And I couldn't get off of first couple pages of notes. So I'm just curious how you decided, your thought process to get from that idea to this.
I will actually, if I hadn't written a book, I would also raise my hand as somebody who's always wanted to write a book. And it's kind of the dream thing. I am not, nothing about this matches my profile. I'm not a professional historian. I'm not a professional Jew. I flunked out of religious school. There's a lot of credentials you need to write a book, and I have none of them. So for those who raised your hands for this, if you have a passion, go after it. And we'll talk about this. This book creates, what I love about this project, it's a passion project. It created a new alley of history that no one's really explored. It was a heck of a lot of fun to do. And it's a history of an element of Congress that no one has been aware of. How did I get the idea that Andy, who was that question? I work for C-SPAN for a living, and raise a show of hands who watches or knows. Oh, a couple of hands going up, great crowd. Oh, in the back, too, thank you, man, for watching C-SPAN. I'm the communications director for C-SPAN, which means I'm the PR guy, basically, and work with the media, get the word out about what we're showing. C-SPAN, for those who don't know, is your unbiased, unfiltered view of Washington, straightforward, gavel to gavel coverage of Congress. No opinions from us. We don't narrate, shape the news, what you're seeing. We trust you to think for yourselves, make up your own mind, and just watch proceedings as they happen. My job involves watching a lot of C-SPAN and watching TV for a living. Not a bad gig to watch TV. You watch Congress all day in hearings. Some people might shy away from that, but I love it. My propeller head is going, and I just love the politics. I love the policy. Watching the House and the Senate every day for my living intrigued me. The first thing that Congress does every day is pray. And that's even before they do the Pledge of Allegiance, there's a prayer. And the prayer is offered most times by the chaplain. There's an official chaplain of the House and official chaplain of the Senate. Taxpayer paid positions. They have taxpayer paid professional staff who work for them. And I was just watching this every day, a prayer opening Congress. This intrigued me on an intellectual curiosity level. What's going on? What's the story here? And we're going to get into this, but sometimes the chaplain, the official chaplain, is not there to give the prayer that opens Congress. And there's a guest chaplain who fills in, kind of like Joan Rivers filling in for Johnny Carson, guest host. You all were too young to get that reference, but thank you. You got it, okay, right. So every so often there's a guest chaplain who fills in. Every so much rarer still, that guest chaplain is a rabbi. I'm Jewish, and that's where I kind of just intrigued by a rabbi opening Congress in prayer. And I just set about, it took me about 6.5 years to do the research and dig in and get to the history of rabbis opening Congress in prayer, guest chaplain rabbis, who they are and what they said. And I'll cut the story short here, but doing research, creating a Google spreadsheet of names of rabbis, what year, what date, House or Senate, who sponsored them, male or female, where they were born, what country, who sponsored them, were the sponsors Republicans or Democrats. And out of that spreadsheet came the book that Andy is so nicely holding up right now. So that's the quickie version of that story.
So about how many rabbis have led prayers in the first, and I'll ask two ways. How many different rabbis approximately, and of that, how many total guest chaplains? I'm just curious the percentage of rabbis of all the guest chaplains.
Yeah, that's a great question.
It's a math question, I'm sorry.
I didn't know there would be math involved in the debate tonight. So every session of Congress begins with a prayer. So House and Senate, if you look at, let's just do a rough number here of 200 legislative sessions of Congress every year. 12 no ballpark figure. So if you have 200 sessions of Congress a year, roughly seven of those prayers are done by rabbis. That number I got by going back to World War II to 2019, on average, 7 or 8 rabbis a year open Congress in prayer. The numbers are skewed. They're different now because of COVID. There were less guest chaplains last year than this year. If you total all that up over history, over the first the first rabbi to open the House of Representatives in prayer was in 1860. Going back to the beginning then to now, there have been roughly about 630 times a rabbi has opened Congress in prayer, done by roughly 424 different rabbis. Why are those numbers different? 424 rabbis, 634 prayers, because as you mentioned, several rabbis have given 2 or more prayers. So that accounts for the most, we'll show this in the presentation, but the rabbi who's done the most prayers has prayed 18 times. Rabbi Arnold Resnikov was prayed 18 times in Congress. So those are rough numbers. Now, what's interesting is that it's a big number. It's minuscule. To your point, it's a fraction of all the prayers I've ever opened in Congress, but there's enough there to do, in my opinion, an academic study of it, and to really look at who they are and what they said, and just go through the historical basis of it.
See, it's 600 and some prayers to work from. That was your data set, we'll call it. We're in San Francisco after all. We're gonna talk about it as a tech thing. How did you approach, you did all that, you had a big spreadsheet going. What, as you put it together, what was the most interesting thing that you didn't expect to find that jumped out at you sort of as you started, I was up in spreadsheets, we started running charts and all that kind of fun stuff and Google Slides. Something pop out at you that was super interesting?
Yeah, that's a great question because there's both content and the process was uncovering fascinating tidbits of Jewish history. These prayers reflect the moment in history many times of what's happening. A rabbi praying during the Vietnam War has a different message in his or her prayer as a rabbi praying more contemporary times who may incorporate immigration themes into his or her prayer. A civil rights era or the war on terror, World War II era prayer. So the sweep of history was probably the biggest, I'm gonna say surprise, but just the biggest learning experience for this, and seeing how a rabbinical prayer in Congress reflects the times. On the process side, it's interesting. I was surprised by the one thing that surprised me on the process side is how tough it is to do this. And I'm not saying in terms of writing a book, it's very difficult to see words that are spoken in Congress that are recorded. I see that, what I mean by that, the congressional record is very difficult to access for the public. And to do this book, I had to go through every congressional record, every prayer. And it's great, they all exist now, but they're all downloaded as PDFs. You can't Google Rabbi prayer in Congress and see every prayer. You have to really inspect and see every congressional record, look through each prayer and pull it up that way. So as much as it is great, Library of Congress has put everything online now. When I began the book, that wasn't online. So a big eureka moment was when they started doing it, but even then it's difficult to search. I'll put in a plug for where I work for C-SPAN. All of our video is online. So C-SPAN began covering Congress in 1979, the US House. So any prayers that happened in Congress after, subsequent to that, easy to search and find the video of. It's the rabbis predating that. That's the difficult part.
So it's interesting, because I think I shared with you before, when I read the book, I felt like it was sort of a lens on how Jews and Judaism is viewed in the public eye, by what they talked about. And you'll find in the book, there's a lot of we quoted a lot of contemporaneous media accounts of the prayer. So if a rabbi from St. Louis was giving the blessing, then maybe the local paper, the Post-Dispatch, might have run some little story about it. And I imagine that was a source of some of the data you got there, but I felt like it changed throughout. And the same thing about the media coverage, and it said as much as the actual words of the prayers.
I'm so happy you said that. The first prayer in 1860, Rabbi Maurice Raphael, born in Sweden, was the rabbi for the congregation of B'nai Jeshurun in New York City. He gave the first prayer, and it was a shock. It was a big shock to the system. Members of Congress had never seen a Jew in front of them like that, leading a prayer. It was front page coverage in the New York Times. And point about local media, it's interesting, the New York Times was, they described him wearing his canonicals. Somebody said it was like a costume he was wearing, because he's wearing a rabbinical looking wardrobe. That was interesting about the first rabbi, and talk about learning stuff. The first rabbi, Maurice Raphael, was pro-slavery. And he gave his prayer February 4th, 1860. James Buchanan was president, and Civil War was moving over. He speaks about the need for brothers to dwell together. And he cites that in the Hebrew Bible, in the Bible. And so just, there are scholars of this first rabbi, Maurice, but definitely to your point about the media coverage, the first couple rabbis made news just by being Jews. Now when a rabbi gives a prayer in Congress, the local media is more interested in it. It's like a local rabbi makes good, and he flies up to Washington, gives a prayer. The families in the audience, everybody's excited. They take a picture with a member of Congress. Afterwards, they put it on social media. So it's much more hyper-local or local oriented when the rabbi does it now versus big national news back in the early days.
Well, stick with the experience. How does a rabbi get to do this? Because I imagine there could be folks who have heard of the book, but I'd love to give a blessing to Congress. So how does that happen? And then maybe walk us through how that happens, and then what they experience from the time they get here, they're doing it all the way through.
Not only is that a beautiful, profound question, it is a very practical question, because as I've been doing Zooms about this book, and again, this is my person-to-person event, and I love being here, but I get a lot of questions that incorporate, how do you do this? How do you get the gig? But what's funny about your question typically comes from a rabbi who wants to do it, wants to get in front.
I'm just counting our audience.
Exactly. And it is a huge honor to do it. The typical way to become, this really applies for any guest chaplain. This isn't necessarily a rabbi or Jewish thing, it's any guest chaplain. Typically, he or she is sponsored by the local member of Congress. So, a senator would sponsor the home state rabbi. And again, I'm using it generically here, it could be any person of the cloth, who's filling in as a guest chaplain. I'll just say rabbi, because the book is. Or a member of Congress who represents that kind of synagogue in the community. These aren't, because the rabbis, they aren't necessarily donors, they're not campaign contributors, but they are learned, established people in the community, and in cases, the member of Congress might even attend that synagogue. That's the most typical kind, just it's sponsoring somebody from your area. Then we branch off into other types of sponsorships. Sometimes a member of Congress is just friends with a rabbi from a different district. I've had in Florida, former Congresswoman Lady Rose Layton in Florida sponsored several rabbis, not from Florida, but from the Washington Hebrew congregation in Washington, D.C., just at a friendly level. So sometimes there's crossover. Another example of times when a rabbi gives a prayer, I promise this will be my only word of jargon here, but there are times when the House has pro forma sessions. For those C-SPAN watchers here, who knows what a pro forma session is? Anybody? Yes, sir. What's a pro forma session?
Basically, the House and the Senate do not adjourn more than 3 days at a time. So pro forma session is a gavel in, gavel out. So basically they come in the House, they come in, they gavel in, and then a chaplain comes in to do prayer. If there's no other business, then they just gavel out after a few minutes.
You have to repeat that for the 2 audience.
So give that gentleman the job of C-SPAN. All right. So
impressive.
that was very good. In fact, I learned a couple things in that. A pro forma session is give me your name again, I'm sorry. It's
My name's Sherman.
Sherman, okay, Sherman points out, it's basically, the House has to maintain, keep me from the weeds here. The House has to maintain business, the House and Senate has to maintain business when it's in recess or there's times that they're off. The rough version of that. The Senate, when it is in pro forma, and both, by the way, both the House and the Senate have pro forma sessions this week. I'm sorry, today, because this week both are out for the Veterans Day holiday. So the Senate had a pro forma, but the Senate does not have a prayer during the pro forma session.
I did not know
It has
that.
that. I'm trying to teach you something. So there's no prayer in the Senate during the pro forma session, but there is in the House. And so because the House, it's basically an empty chamber, and you're right, they meet for about 10, 15 minutes and gavel out. Then it becomes a geography thing. Then it's whoever's closest to Washington, D.C., the Congress comes in, and if there's a guest chaplain, gives a prayer. I will add one asterisk to all of this conversation. It's for two reasons. It's been a while since there has been a guest chaplain in the chamber. One, again, because of COVID, just they, just the practices, they've been tighter about it. But also the two current chaplains, neither one of which, the Senate chaplain, Perry Black, who's a Seventh-day Adventist, has not had a chaplain for some time. And on the House side, for the first time, there's a woman chaplain. Her name is Margaret Kibben, Presbyterian. Both of them are retired Navy chaplains. She's new to the job, so she's been there for a couple months. She hasn't had a guest chaplain that often, so doesn't happen much. But again, Sherman, thank you for doing what a performance session is. I didn't need to go too far into that.
So I'm gonna hold you to the second part of the question. So you've got to know your member of Congress. So we're in San Francisco. You gotta have an in with the speaker, I guess, to get invited. Let's say, right? So let's say that Speaker Pelosi invites you to do this, and they get a call saying, "Hey, Rabbi, show up on June 13th," and like, how does that go? And yeah, all that.
Perfect. And by the way, I'll just add that Speaker Pelosi has never sponsored a rabbi. I don't know if she has sponsored any guest chaplain, but there have been rabbis from the Bay Area and from California who have been guest chaplain from San Francisco, in fact, but none sponsored by Speaker Pelosi. So yeah, so they get the letter. They typically a rabbi will contact the representative and say, "I want to be chosen. You pick me." So they get picked, and then they do get the letter of invite from the chaplain, the House or the Senate chaplain, saying, "We're pleased that thanks to ex-Congressperson, you've been selected to attend Congress on X date." They'll send a couple things, one of which is rules, but of things you can and cannot say during the prayer. Prayers are typically roughly about 2 minutes in length. They have a word limit to them. You cannot, there are a couple of things you can't do. You can't get involved in politics. You're there to pray, not to lobby. They have legislation. You can't speak a foreign language. By the way, only Jews speak foreign languages in their prayers, but as you can't mention a foreign country. You're there to pray, basically. So you go through a lot of things you can't do. What you can do, what you should do, and you're urged to do is you aren't praying to members of the chamber, you're praying to God. And so your messaging is really geared for, I don't want to get divinical here, but to the Almighty. I mean, it's messaging to God, but including the chamber as the congregation, right? So you get that letter, and you fly out at your own expense. Nobody pays you. The government's not paying you to come out here. You bring your family, and it's a big honor. And typically now, the synagogue, or it could be a church, will contact the local media and tell them you're coming out here. But if you are a local rabbi in DC, you get parking. They arrange for your parking spot. I say that because if anybody's been to DC, that's a big deal. So I wish I could be a rabbi and get parking in Capitol Hill sometimes. So, but yeah, so
There's still time.
There's still time. I know there's still time. And then that's it. They get your picture afterwards. So it's a letter of invite. Easy out there.
Okay. A couple more questions, then I think it'd be great for you to show some, because you've got some clips, some video clips. And for the folks both on Zoom during the video, I'll take a look at the chat if there's questions. And if any of y'all here have questions for Howard, please, we'll leave plenty of time for that. So first rabbi, 1860. Here, we'll do a little lightning round.
All right, cool. Yeah.
Okay, this is like a trivia thing. First female rabbi, when?
Oh, this is great. First, this is gonna be fun. First female rabbi. So again, as Andy points out, the first rabbi, 1860, him, is he, Rabbi Maurice. First woman rabbi, 1973, was the first time a woman rabbi praised in Congress. Now, before you get too outraged or shocked, or that it took so long, and you're welcome to get outraged and shocked, the first rabbi, her name was Rabbi Sally Prezant. She was the first rabbi who prayed in Congress. Sally, in 1973. Sally Priesand was also the first rabbi ordained in America the year before. So,
First female rabbi.
I'm sorry, thank you, the first female rabbi ordained in America the year before Hebrew Union College. So it took them, yes, from 1860 to 1973 for a woman rabbi. That data set, but the other data set is 1 year after she was ordained. So of the 423 separate rabbis who are prayed in Congress, 14 have been women. Now, you can, again, depending on how you start the clock, that's either great, that many, or how can it be so few? It's really how you interpret the data on that. But again, the first one was 1973, Sally Priesand of New York, sponsored by, all right, so any political junkies here, who would have sponsored Rabbi Sally Priesand in 1973 she's from, Rabbi Priesand is from New York City, it's a Stephen Wise synagogue. Who would have sponsored her?
Bella Upson.
Bella, what's your name?
Carrie.
Oh my goodness, oh, Gary, nice to meet you, oh, Gary's the best, Gary's the best. Bella, Congresswoman Bella Abzug.
Did you read the book?
No, but I've listened to.
Oh, she's
and,
done.
so I'm
She's-
I'm absorbed.
Yeah,
now.
she's like the Grateful Dead founding
Yeah.
member.
I'm a groupie.
Thank you. Carrie was not only brilliant for knowing about the book and following it on Zoom, but also known as Bella Abzug, in 1973 sponsored the first woman. Now, a couple things here. When Sally Priesand gives her prayer in Congress, she does not say, "I am the first woman. I'm a trailblazer. I'm a pioneer." She just gives a prayer. But Bella Abzug does mention over and over. By the way, I hate saying this for younger people, Bella Abzug, a pioneering liberal member of Congress, feminist, 1970s, early 70s, Carrie, I did this right, was like a time of great, brand new this and that for women achieving positions and doing things. So it kind of makes sense historically that the first woman was sponsored by Bella Abzug because Bella Abzug did a lot of that stuff back then.
Thank you for that. How about,
I'm sorry, I'm slowing down lightning now. This is
okay,
hardly
it's
like
okay, it's fun. So outside of the local area, Maryland, DC, Virginia, which state has sent the most rabbis to the House or the Senate or all the combined?
The top states would include Pennsylvania. These are gonna be obvious states, Pennsylvania, Florida, and the big one is New York. It's given, the numbers, it's like 20% of the rabbis have been from New York. Again, demographically makes sense. The flip side of that, a lot of rabbis have been from states you would not expect rabbis to be from. Alaska has had a rabbi pray in Congress. Lubavitch rabbi, see like the Lubavitch rabbi, Chabad Lubavitch rabbi was prayed in Congress, sponsored by Lisa Murkowski, Republican senator. Nebraska has had a rabbi pray in Congress. So I don't want to use, forgive me if I use the word obscure, but like states you wouldn't associate with Jewish population. Have had rabbis.
I've heard of Nebraska.
Oh, you heard of it? Lightning round in Nebraska, have had rabbis pray, but they roughly do match the demographics of where Jews are from.
I know a lot of the rabbis were also military chaplains. So I expect among guest chaplains in general, this would be the case, but have there been Jewish guest chaplains from all the services?
From all the services, yes, all the branches are represented. And about 100 of the rabbis who prayed in Congress have also been military rabbis, been chaplains in all the branches, or have fought as soldiers in wars. World War II, many of the rabbis who prayed in Congress were also soldiers. Again, I mentioned earlier Rabbi Resnikov, has given most number of prayers. He fought in Vietnam. He was in the Mekong Delta as a soldier, not necessarily as a chaplain, as a soldier. He was also in Beirut during the bombings in the barracks in Beirut during the 80s. So frontline soldiers have become rabbis, but also, yes, military chaplains. So roughly about 100 or so military chaplains have also been Congress rabbis.
Hey, Ram, how are we ready for the presentation? Are you still working on that?
All right, so Ram, I'm gonna work for people watching on Zoom, Ram is great, Ram's with the establishment here, we are going to, if you've done the Zoom, and I'm curious in this many times, the presentation that's geared for San Francisco, so I have tailored it, my glasses on, so, Ram, I will look for a cue from you, let me talk about the slides. Perfect, perfect. All right, can I, do you mind, can I talk along with it? Awesome, that's great. Okay, next slide, please, Ram. All right, let's play this. And here's just a flat out example, not Jewish. Prayer, Can I go ahead? Yeah. Okay, I won't do this back and forth too much then, thank you, all right, so again, nothing Jewish about that, other than to use the word shalom in the beginning, that was just happenstance, which is kind of interesting. That was the official chaplain of the house, given a prayer in September. This is how Congress starts every day. So Ram, I'm ready to go to the next slide if that's okay. A brief history of prayers in Congress. It goes back to the very beginning, and some of you might be wondering, well, why? I mean, the big question, why does Congress pray? This is the very first thing Congress did, was appoint, elect chaplains, and pray goes back to the very beginning. And in fact, the last date there, Bill of Rights, was not ratified until after Congress had already been praying, which is kind of an interesting point there. Okay, Ram, next slide, please. We mentioned guest chaplains began in the 1850s, and the first rabbi guest chaplain was in 1860. Next slide, Ram. And we mentioned here is our guy, Maurice, the first one, and there's the quote, north and south, and from south and from east and west, joyfully repeat the words of the psalmist, lo, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. And I pulled that out there because, again, the eve of the Civil War, even though Lincoln's not president yet, James McGinn's president, but you can kind of get the sense of history of looming over the House chamber. Okay, Ram, I'm going to play this video for an example of a rabbi praying in Congress. I'll be quiet, but I'll talk about the other side of this. and I was telling Angie also, just so you know, ma'am, for the interest of time, I'm not gonna show everything in here. I'm gonna talk about this and probably plow through a couple of the other things real fast. But this one, a couple things happening in this prayer. Rabbi Lelyveld, this is historical and content. Rabbi Lelyveld, 1993, gave this prayer in the house. He died, I think 3 or 4 years later. Famous historical Jewish figure in the civil rights era. He marched in Selma, part of the civil rights struggle in the South. You heard him incorporate a lot of the themes of social justice and civil rights, bring the Jewish themes into that. He ended his prayer with Hebrew. I used, you've heard that I said, hey, you can say Mortman, I thought he said there's no Hebrew. Those rules are more recent, and there's a time when Hebrew could be used in prayers. And it's actually very interesting to hear him use Hebrew at the end. You may hear his name, his son, by the way, is Joseph Lelyveld, who was a former executive editor of the New York Times. So this, I just like this prayer because it's full of this really rich stuff to look at and to talk about. So sponsored by Congressman Stokes of Ohio, an African American congressman, by the way, 1993. Ram, I'm going to go to the next slide. I'm going to do some editing as we go along to try to.
Before you do, I got a note from one of the folks on Zoom that they couldn't hear the audio from the cast. So it's something we can solve.
Yeah.
Okay, good, cool. We are on it, sir.
All right.
Back to you.
Thank you. Okay, and actually, that's good. Most prayers by Rabbi, chaplain, we mentioned Rabbi Resnikoff. Actually, another rabbi, I believe, is on the Zoom watching, is Rabbi Zoberman, who is not on that slide, but from Virginia Beach, and he has given a large number of prayers. Rabbi Resnikoff's going to hate me for this, but I'm not going to show this video. I'm just going to keep on going. Sorry, Rabbi Resnikoff, I know you're in the audience, but in the interest of time. How many prayers we've done this? How many prayers? 634 times. Rabbis prayed in Congress, 441 different rabbis. I will mention Resnikoff there. He's done 18 of them. In fact, the most recent one is 18th Chai, Hebrew for life. So that's meaningful. Okay, Ray, next slide. Thank you. Top synagogues, Washington Hebrew congregation, locally based, 24 rabbis have given prayers to Washington Hebrew congregation. I pulled out a prayer there from Addis, Israel, in Austin, Washington, ranks 3rd with 7 prayers. This was given on June 5th, 1944. All right, students from the audience, what happened the next day on June 6th, 1944? Gary, you want to answer the question? That's right, D-Day, the big invasion. So here's a rabbi giving a prayer in the Senate the day before, and if you can see, he's talking about victory and military language in prayer. It's kind of interesting how that would, even though D-Day was a secret, presumably, but still the sense of history over the Senate at that time. Okay, Ray, next one, please. Okay, Andy asked about top states. There you go. New York ranks 1st, Pennsylvania, Maryland, New Jersey, Florida, California, 29 prayers by 22 rabbis.
Do any from San Francisco jump out at you?
We're actually, yes, they jump out because I believe the next slide is a video. Well, here are San Francisco Rabbi chaplain. Andy, once again, is brilliant. Thanks to welcome to Manny's and everybody here in the audience for their brilliance as well. Now, a couple of things here I'm going to split because I have bad eyesight. Rabbis from San Francisco. Jacob Fortsinger gave the prayer in 1898. Now, okay, I'm going to geek out history here. This prayer, all right, Andy, what was happening in America in June 1898? That would be interesting to point out at this time in our conversation.
I have no idea.
You're right, the Spanish-American War. You're absolutely right. And that's being fought at this time that a rabbi is praying in Congress. Now, what's even further, what do you think is even further interesting about that? A rabbi from California praying in Congress while the Spanish-American War is going on.
I want to go to Carrie for this.
Gary's right. Carrie and Andy are right with the tech team because California sends a contingent of Jews to fight in the Spanish-American War. A volunteer, about 100 or so volunteers from California head out there. So it all comes together now. Anybody can answer this. What did the New York Times get wrong in their article about Rabbi Fortsinger's prayer? Whoever said they misspelled his name You're correct. You misspelled his name in the coverage of
I
that,
was
so.
gonna correct you and say, no, it's Morshauer.
Yeah, that's the New York Times got it wrong, which makes searching difficult, but not impossible. We just do different variations. All right, moving on, 1915, another grant, thank you, grant, thank you. Then more from San Francisco, Congregation Manuel in what's 1930? Okay, 1930, January 7th, 1930, Tammy Manuel. I believe right in the next slide is a video I will show of a, here you go, listen to Rabbi Herbert Maurice of San Francisco.
The representatives on C-SPAN.
The House will be in order. Prayer will be offered by our guest chaplain, Rabbi Herbert Morris, Beth Israel, Judea Congregation, San Francisco, California.
Let us pray. In these morning hours of life renewed, we pause to give thanks to the God of all creation and to ask for a blessing. A blessing for you who are the representatives of our United States, called upon to be our leaders, men and women especially chosen in this land of freedom to continue and to create the laws of fairness, justice, and equality among us all. We are so many and so diverse, a nation of all races, beliefs, and opinions. We stand in need of understanding ourselves, our fellow citizens, our world. In the words of a modern American educator and teacher, Solomon Sachs, some pray gifts truly divine, and some ask for power, only thine. Wouldst thou me a blessing impart? Grant me, O Lord, an understanding heart. Amen.
The chair has examined the
Sponsored by, who knows who sponsored him? Anybody can answer this question. This is an easy one. Who sponsored Rabbi Herbert Morris on May 20th, 1992? Did I hear Tom Lantos? That's right. Whoever said Tom Lantos in the back, Democrat of California, you're absolutely right. Tom Lantos, San Francisco sponsored Rabbi Herbert Morris. Now, we're good in the interest of time, Ram, what I'm not gonna do, I'm not gonna show any more from the presentation for right now. After I've stopped micromanaging the conversation, Andy's gonna take questions. But Ram, just one directorial thing, we're gonna end with the final video that's in here, which is, well, it'll speak for itself, but if you just go to the very end, well, it's about a 4-minute video. I think the title is a word from our sponsors, is that slide. So I will, that'll be the last thing to show is our cold closing. And I'll let Andy take over.
It's okay. So we love to take questions from anyone here. Come on, sure, I'm dying to ask a question here.
Sure, I'll ask a general question about C-SPAN if I may.
I have to be official now. I'm gonna add on.
Give you a microphone here.
Thank you, Ram. If you're laughing at that joke.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. I just want to ask you, what do you think has been the biggest contribution that C-SPAN has made since 1979?
Viewers like Sherman, that probably is the biggest contribution. No, that's such a nice question. So a couple things. We are not the government. We are privately funded. What we do as C-SPAN is show gavel to gavel coverage of politics and the government. But even though we show the government, we're not the government. We make independent editorial decisions of what we cover, where we send our cameras, what feeds we bring in. It's all our choosing, made by professional journalists using editorial discretion. Again, we are not funded by the government. We are a nonprofit. So what that means is that there are no commercials on C-SPAN, no commercials because we're not making money for anybody. I say that as a preface to your question of, and by the way, for people at home on Zoom, Sherman asked what the greatest contribution is. I think that our greatest contribution has been the ability to allow people just to watch for themselves and learn from themselves and learn small slivers of history, like rabbis praying Congress, are big concepts like going to war, votes on war, votes on infrastructure, just allowing you to watch for yourself happening. I think, I think and I hope there will continue to be an element of America's population that wants to see and view for themselves and not be told what to think. So again, the key takeaways from that is nonprofit, no government money, privately funded, and we speak out of the way. We have about 160 people on staff, and you won't hear opinions from us, editorial, narrative. Our goal is just to allow you to think for yourselves. I could say that's the biggest, most profound thing I can do to answer your question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Any other, yes, ma'am?
Thank you, Brooke, and I look forward to reading your book. I'm curious about, I guess, I've read some of Jonathan Saunders' work about the ways in which rabbis over the course of history have done external messaging, kind of PR about the Jewish community and their positions through like newspapers and radio addresses and things like that. To your knowledge, is there a difference between the rabbinic messaging in Congress versus the messaging that they are able to do elsewhere, understanding that there's a broader audience at stake?
That's such a, I know every question Andy said, that's a great question. I want to take all that back because that is, ladies and gentlemen, what a great question is. Okay, so give me your name again, I'm sorry. Great, okay. So you mentioned Dr. Sarna at the beginning. Jonathan Sarna is a legendary, one of the greatest Jewish historians now. So if you have a chance to read his work, or his books, he knows all this. I mentioned Rabbi Raphael at the beginning. He's done books on Raphael, and he's done books on the Abraham Lincoln and some of the Jews. So anyway, so I'm glad you mentioned him. He's the preeminent Jewish historian. The question is messaging by rabbis in Congress. I would answer this way. Rabbis have participated. I'm going to go broad. Let me go broad, then I'll go narrow. Broadly, prayers are not.
I'm gonna give you a 5-minute warning because we have lesbian history of Valencia Street.
Okay, I want to leave room for the video at the end, if I could.
Yes.
Okay, all right, so let me answer the question, and we'll play the last video that's in the presentation. Prayers are not just in Congress, prayers are in presidential inaugurations, prayers are in party conventions, there's prayer in state legislatures, city councils of prayer. All this is protected by the Supreme Court. There have been challenges to it. Some of the prayers that rabbis have given in inaugurations. The first one was 1948, thank you. Harry Truman's inauguration, the first rabbi prayer. Much loftier language, and some of the convention prayers by rabbis have been much more pointed, stronger, and so on. So it's a brilliant question. Since I'm going to do nothing but no justice to it, I'm not going to answer any more of it. Then thank you for that.
You guys can talk after.
We'll talk.
Okay, this is my favorite part of Howard's presentation to close. I think it needs no introduction.
No introduction other than just tell Ram this would be our last.
Yes.
Our final video.
Will be in order. Today's opening prayer being guest of Senator Mark Warner will be offered by our guest chaplain, Rabbi Israel Zilberman, founding rabbi, Congregation Beth Shabram in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
The prayer will be offered by a guest chaplain, the Rabbi Wayne Dawson of the Elijah Manny, La Costa, California.
The prayer will be offered by the guest chaplain, the Rabbi Richard Baruch Rabinowitz, Aish International, New York, New York. The prayer will be offered by the guest chaplain, the Rabbi Thomas A. Lockheim, Congregation Or Kadash, Tucson, Arizona.
It will be offered by the guest chaplain, Reverend Erwin N. Goldenberg, Temple Beth Israel, York, Pennsylvania.
The prayer will be offered today by our guest chaplain, Rabbi Stephen Roth, the Congregation Eitz Gahin, Passaic, New Jersey. The prayer will be offered today by our guest chaplain, Rabbi Michael Siegel, Anshe Emet Synagogue, Chicago, Illinois.
And I count it a high honor present to you His Excellency Shem Herzog, President of Israel.
Today's prayer will be offered by guest chaplain, Rabbi Shem Shon Shara, Congregation Chi Rome Mordecai, Brooklyn, New York.
Prayer will be offered by guest chaplain, Rabbi Maurice Fuller, Rabbis House, St. Paul, Minnesota.
Today's prayer will be offered by guest chaplain, Rabbi Mel Heck, Temple Beth Ann, Las Vegas, Nevada, a guest of Senator Harry Reid.
As Rabbi Harvard mentioned in his invocation, today is significant. It's significant because it's the day of the Shabbat community, important, the day of the Shabbat community. It's the 15th anniversary of the passing of Rabbi Shanarison, one of the great Jewish leaders of our time.
Rabbi Feller has been a leader in the Twin Cities Jewish community for over 30 years. Accompanying the rabbi today were 20 students from the Habab Academy located in St. Paul, Minnesota.
And completed postgraduate Judaic studies at the Lubavitch Yeshiva in Brooklyn, New York. Since 1988, Rabbi Green has served as the Lubavitcher Rebbe emissary to Rochester.
Madam Speaker, I want to talk about Rabbi Hyman, who just gave the opening prayer. There is a midrash, one of the many parables that embellish upon the Torah. In this particular midrash, there is a man from the land of Israel, a businessman who was in another country.
I would say that in addition to his spiritual guidance, he introduced me to Cholent, which for this Presbyterian was a new experience. I think I thank him for introducing me to that part of his history and culture, if not exactly for the culinary experience. Welcome, Rabbi Wiederhorn, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back the balance of my time.
Wow. Wow.
Please do. Oh, yes. Well, actually, I'm going to micromanage again. All right, this is huge again. Manny, right?
Yeah.
Manny, it's great to meet you. Thank you for doing this. I'm beyond words, just pulled over that you said yes to having me participate. My first, maybe only, but first doing an in-person discussion. So thank you to the great folks and welcome Manny's space here. Thank you to the audience for coming out on such an obscure topic. Thank you for Andy, who had 10 minutes of prep, knowing that he was going to be leading this conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, please, if you're going to call anybody, give it to Andy. Again, Andy's, by the way, I know we're losing your time. Andy's too shy to say this makes the perfect Hanukkah present, so I'll just say that because I don't want to
buy
embarrass. 8 copies. Hanukkah this year, 8 nights this year, by the way. I don't even check the calendar. So how smart. If you buy 8 copies of this as gifts, people say you are just brilliant. I mean, the wisdom that you will just show your community by buying 8 copies of the book for Hanukkah.
Thank you very much, Howard. You're going to stay after and sign books?
I will be here all night. My flight's tomorrow and United back to Dallas, so I'll be here.
All right, thank you all very much. And anything we need to add here, man?
Just want to say thank you to our panelists. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you, Howard, for writing this book. There you go. If you have not picked it up, you should. If for no other reason than just to acknowledge the great effort that Howard went through to write this book. This is one of those books that needed to have been written. Please, yeah. But it takes a special man to write a book of this kind. So thank you, Howard, so much. Thank you for your service to C-SPAN also. It is a invaluable resource to our country and our democracy. And I count myself as a big fan of C-SPAN, watch it often and love it. So thank you. When Rabbis Bless Congres by Howard Mortman. All right, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And feel free to stay for our next event on the lesbian history of Valencia Street. Thanks so much.